Started out on a one-way train. Always knew where I was gonna go next. Didn't know until
Hello and welcome to Pull and Perseverance, and thank you for joining me. My intriguing guest today is Mr. Thulasizwe Shelembe. He is a warehousing and distribution pharmacist who epitomizes the ancient Chinese proverb, and I quote, "Be not afraid of growing slowly, be afraid of only standing still," unquote. Enjoy the episode. Good morning, Tula. Hi, welcome to Pull and Perseverance, and thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule. So let's kick off immediately. Just to introduce you, I know you the responsible pharmacist of a very well-known, very established countrywide wholesaler distributor. So how did you get there? And was wholesale and distribution your first choice in your career?
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. The first question, yes, I do work for an international wholesale and distribution organization. Was it my first choice? Actually, no. I don't think that when you're in varsity, or at least when I was in varsity, we were that exposed to the different industries and different sectors. I mean, we knew about them, but as far as wholesale and distribution, I knew very little about it until a couple of years back when I worked for a smaller organization before moving to this one. So it wasn't my first choice, but I choose it out of anything right now because I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Wow, that's wonderful. So how did you get there? Because, in my experience as an academic, although we teach good wholesale practice within the curriculum, I generally find it's not even a consideration for most pharmacists. I mean, it's really anecdotal evidence. I really don't know for sure, but from my experience thus far, how do you think in academia we're not exposing students enough? Is that the reason why it's not a sought after position?
So, I mean, I appreciate the fact that you are in academia and you get to have industry conversations like this with people in different industries. I do feel like a lot of that doesn't happen as often as I feel it should be happening, where we try to, merge the two worlds into being one thing. So that's why I've got this very great interest in bringing young people or pharmacy students into the warehouse to show them around and basically teach them a thing or two about quality assurance. But how I got here, to go back to your first question, is um, I did a quality course. I did a quality course with one of the universities. It was Porsche, and then there's a quality course they offer there. And I got in, and then I did that quality course. And I don't know. I mean, it is hard work. It is applying for jobs. It is doing well in interviews, but there's also a stroke of luck that has to go with it, I suppose, because I didn't know anybody in the industry. But as soon as I basically did my course, I was able to get my first job, which was in Harties. It was a small wholesale and distribution pharmaceutical warehouse. And from then on, I just basically moved and propelled myself forward through interviews and just always applying and staying on the ball and making sure that I teach myself. A lot of the teachings that you get to do, that I got to do at least, were on the internet. I used a lot of YouTube videos to learn what wholesale distribution is about so I could better prepare for my interviews. And yeah, going back to your other question about academia, whether academia is doing enough. So I studied in Nelson Mandela University, as it is known now. It was NMMU back then, Nelson Mandela Metropolitan, and it was offered definitely. We got to learn about it, but I don't think that the kind of detail that would have made me decide to go into it was offered at that time. And I'm glad that now they're doing more work into it. So again, that those two industries, academia and the actual professional world, they need to always meet at some point and actually discuss and see what is needed, what is lacking. Us who have graduated need to be able to go back to you guys to say, I think that we need to consider this in the curriculum.
So many things you said there. So my first question before we unpack what you've just said is, do you think this quality assurance course that you did was the reason that you really moved into and was able to get a job in that sector? Or do you really think we could pharmacists could, achieve that wholesale distribution position without that quality course?
I think they can definitely get in without that quality course. I've got pharmacists that I've hired, and most of them came from retail and hospital, and they didn't really have the experience. Um, I think more than anything, there's a certain attitude that you must carry when you're walking into an interview. And I mean, there's a bit of a disconnect, right? People expect us to want to know what they know in the interview. No, we're basically trying to look at, can we work with you? Are you a person who is able to work with others? Are you a person who is a team player? Are you a person we can rely on? And the questions are always around there, and they're situational in nature. So it's easy to pick up somebody whose values and maybe belief systems don't really align with the organization. So I don't think doing the quality course is the only way to get there. I do think it does help you in some instances to at least get your foot into the door, but I don't think it's the only way to get there. A lot of the pharmacists I've actually hired did not have the quality course.
Wow, that's interesting. So, in terms of what, going back to what you said in terms of your interview, yes, I think having that core skills of being personable, that you can be timeous in terms of arriving at work on time, those things are really important.
Mhm.
But the argument is always, in terms of your background knowledge, how would you prepare for a wholesale interview? Because I think you have to have some theory. You have to know what good wholesale practice is all about, how distribution, good wholesale distribution, what it entails, the legislation, good wholesale practice. Tula. I mean, that's how we met in terms of that space and the legislation around it. So, what tips would you give to somebody who wants to get into that field but needs to be able to get some background information before they go for that interview?
So, I mean, the internet is the most powerful tool right now, and when used positively, there's a lot that you can actually learn from it. So, I'd really advise one to look up, first of all, like the most basic interview tips, and then after that, go into the internet to learn about what wholesale and distribution does. And specifically, when you want to work for a specific organization, it's important that you research the organization, find out what they do, so that when you are sitting in the interview, you also have questions to pose to the interviewers to say, okay, how do we deal with this? Because now you've got that knowledge. But there is a lot of what's the word, vocabulary that we use. There are words like CAPAs, deviations, validation, qualification, all those words and the terminology. You do need to learn it, and I'd say it's important when you're preparing for an interview that you understand what it means to validate a system, to validate a machine, to validate a warehouse, or to map a warehouse. So it's important that people accustom themselves with the language, and they try to get as much knowledge as they can from the internet and also about the specific organization, because then it becomes more easier to try and adapt what you've learned into the organization, then walk into the interview feeling confident, knowing what the business does and what is expected of you should get employed in the organization.
Oh, I love that, Tula. Thank you. So, I think knowing what the organization's vision and goals are
Yeah.
is key in understanding their background, but also knowing the terminology. You can't go there not knowing what validation is, as you said.
Yeah.
So, in a typical day, what's your day like as the responsible pharmacist of a, I mean, it's a massive site that you work at.
Mhm.
It supplies the whole country, and as you said, internationally as well. So what is your typical day? What time does it start? What do you do? So yeah,
Yeah.
just walk us through that.
Yeah. So basically, the organization supplies the whole continent in some sense. I mean, we do get countries around the continent who get medical supplies directly from Germany, India, and some other European countries. But then um, my day is weird. It's difficult to actually place out and talk about it, because I always, when I get asked, what do you do for a living? I always say I work in logistics, or I work in a warehouse. But it's every day poses its own different challenges. So basically, what we do is we receive stock from different clients, and our clients are all pharmaceutical manufacturers, organizations themselves. So I work with the quality managers and the responsible pharmacists from the different pharma companies. Like, name a pharmaceutical company around the world, we probably have them as a client. So I work with them. I work on their requests with my team. So whenever, because we receive their stock, so my team basically takes pictures of the stock and sends the stock to the clients to show them this is how the stock came in looking like. I'm looking after the temperatures in the warehouse. I have to know that this specific area is supposed to be an ambient area where it is kept between 15 and 25 degrees Celsius. So if it goes out, I need to investigate what happened. I need to make sure that our mapping is in place, a warehouse mapping for temperature monitoring and control. Um, my day is always going to be different from the previous, because I also have to work with deviations when we have deviated or done something wrong or not conformed to a specific process that we have promised or put in place, promised our clients or put in place for our own organization. So my typical day basically starts with me having to go and sift through all of my emails to see what is the most important, what's the most pressing issue. And obviously, if there's a deviation, I have to start with that because that's an emergency. I have to sort it out as soon as possible. I have to make sure my staff is at work. I have to make sure that everybody has everything they need to be able to perform their tasks. I work with the operations team a lot. So me and the operations team normally do walkabouts around the warehouse to make sure that the warehouse is clean, it is in a presentable condition, and there's nothing that is on our floors that is basically contrary to what we're supposed to be adhering to in terms of SAPRA and any other regulatory authority that might be out there in terms of how we keep pharmaceuticals. It's really different things on a daily basis, and I spend most of my days in audits. Actually, a lot of these clients whose stock is kept by me and which is distributed by myself in the warehouse, they have to come in and audit me. And when they audit me, they want to know everything from my qualification to what skill set I present, to what my team does, to what the operations guys do, the distribution team, and everybody else in the organization. So it's a big mouthful. It's difficult to just pop up in one sentence, but I do a lot because I work in logistics.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. So before we go on, how many clients can you say you have at the moment? Ballpark figure.
Run about between 60 and 90. So way above
Wow.
50, between 60 and 90
Mhm.
clients. And it's all pharmaceuticals, both local and international.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So from what I understand in wholesale and distribution is that each client has their own requirements. So you'd have to be aware. For example, client A says, I want it at this temperature and I want it to be distributed in this way. So how do you work around that? Because that's a lot to manage up to 90 clients and understand each of the, service level
Requirements.
agreements that you have. Yeah, that could be challenging. So I guess that's the dynamic space of logistics. And how do you keep up with that?
A very good question. Thank you, Venu. So, I mean, a lot of the processes that we have to get a buy-in from all of our clients. We have to get a buy-in from all of our clients, and this has not happened, at least in my presence, that we have set standard or standardized SOPs or regulations that we're going to be adhering to and send them out to our clients. The client has said, okay, this doesn't align with my processes. We are always able to try and bend ourselves a bit to try and accommodate every specific client. But it's not an easy task, like you say, but we do have standardized processes that are presented to all our clients before we even get to signing our quality assurance agreements with every client. So we first sit down and we discuss, listen, this is what we have, this is what we're able to offer you. And then if you have anything specific or something that's different, we work a way around it, and it has to be added onto our regular SOPs for us to make sure that we're able to then accommodate you to the best of our ability in order for you to be able to maintain your quality.
Yeah, so quality management systems form a very big core part of your business, am I right? And
Yeah.
being able to have that updated. So that's another skill, I think, as a responsible pharmacist, or even as a pharmacist within wholesale and distribution. You need to understand that there's a lot of quality management system processes that you need to understand. So is
Mm-hmm.
that something that you learned on the job, or was it something that you were trained behind the scenes, or how did you get exposure and training on that? Was it on the job?
So, I mean, every quality management system, I'm not sure, I'm sure you are familiar, and the audience may be familiar with PICS guidelines.
Mm.
Every quality management system, and even SAPRA, is sort of adapting what PICS has put out there as the standards, and these are international standards that I adhere to. And I just want to add that South Africa actually is on par with the best in the world in terms of our guidelines, in terms of how we warehouse and distribute our pharmaceuticals. So the most important thing is that at the very basic level, you need to understand temperatures, you need to understand storage requirements of medicines, and all those things. Once you learn the basics, you come into every organization, sorry, they'll have their own different kind of warehouse management system, or WMS, or quality management system also. You are going to be able to then take what you've learned from PICS and then adapt it to what is being done in that specific organization. So did I come in already knowing everything? No, I don't think anybody can say that. But then you obviously get to learn and be better with all of the audits you go through
Mm.
and all of the exposure that you get to have while you're working in the organization. So I know that we are also aligning with basically international guidelines in terms of how we set up our warehouse and run our warehouse. So I'm very confident that we are meeting our world standards. So it's not going to be an easy thing to say that you're going to walk in knowing everything, but it's a bit of both. You learn in the job, and you also
Mhm.
might have some basic knowledge.
Yeah, I think as the BPharm degree in South Africa, the underpinning legislation in terms of wholesale and distribution is there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the good pharmacy practice, all of that aligns to what's required in a wholesale and distribution. If you know that, I think you can walk into the job knowing that you have that background knowledge, but learn as you go, as you said. So
Mm-hmm.
in saying that, and I agree with you, I think South Africa is leading in terms of following PICS guidelines, and SAPRA is amazing in terms of being one of the really formidable regulatory bodies that we're seeing. They're growing from strength to strength.
Yeah.
Um, but what has been your biggest, um, I mean, should I say the worst experience that you've had as the RP at DSV? I mean, something that will stick, something that you'll tell your great grandchildren about. That was your worst day that you experienced in a wholesale space.
Um, wow.
It
So
sounds like you had many, Tula.
not really. Not really. I think what's important for anybody walking into a workspace is the understanding that you are dealing with human beings, and as long as that is the case, you'll definitely encounter challenges that are not always gonna, be just work related. So, I mean, working with clients is a challenge, and you need to have a good backbone, but you also need to learn to be compassionate. You need to learn to be accommodating. You need to learn the different personality types of the people you're working with. Is there one big event that stands out for me, which was the worst? Not necessarily, but I do get to have to manage both my staff that reports to myself, and I have to manage the clients and their expectations, and it's a
Mm.
great balancing act. And having the leadership skills and the know-how in terms of how to handle those two and balance the two is a great skill in its own. So there isn't one specific incident that I remember that sticks out. I actually really enjoy being at my job. Even on my worst day, you'd find me still smiling and saying, oh, yeah, we just had it now with this client, didn't we?
Yeah, I love that about you too. That definitely you exude that when I met you.
Mm.
I remember, I'm not sure if it was you or it was another wholesale practice that I heard the story from where I'm sure it was you where it was an item that was actually a fridge item that came into the warehouse, but a blanket was put over it or some covering was put over it, so they couldn't see that it was a fridge item, and it wasn't put in the fridge. Was it you? No.
No, it
No,
wasn't
maybe
me.
not.
Mm.
Okay, but what I'm getting at is, situations like that where now you become liable because you didn't follow due process in terms of identifying stock.
Mhm.
So what happens in situations like that? Do you bear the brunt of that cost? Or what would happen? What would happen if something where you're not maintaining temperature control based on what the client requires?
So, I mean, with any warehouse or wholesale organization, that is a possibility. So, you then get to discuss those things beforehand. What happens in situations like this? And
Mm.
those things are all captured in your agreements with your different clients. Um, in terms of not being able to maintain temperatures, I mean, I obviously have to learn to identify the deviation or the nonconformity that has happened, and then I have a duty to then respond to my clients within a specified amount of time for my
Mm.
organization. As soon as I know, I usually do a brief investigation to make sure it is a deviation or a nonconformity. Then I have to inform all of my clients within 48 hours. I then have to put together a report. Um, yeah, it's been good. I mean, I've been at the organization for close to 3 years now, and we have never really had a situation whereby majority of the stock that could have been affected by a temperature excursion was actually destructed or sent for destruction. So the excursions usually last for a couple of hours when they have happened. And in the 3 years that I've been there, I think we've only had, I mean, we've had a few, less than three that I can recall right now.
Okay.
So it doesn't happen often. We've got such great control systems in place to make sure we avoid incidents like that. And going back to the receiving question, when you receive stock, maybe it's captured in ambient boxes and 15 to 25 degrees Celsius, and it's supposed to be kept at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. It's very nice that we have a system in place where we know exactly what we're going to be receiving and when. So we then
Oh.
get to use those pre-notifications or advanced shipping notices, which are ASNs. We are then able to say, okay, this stock is coming on what day. As soon as it hits our floor, we know what stock it is, then we know exactly what the storage requirements are, and we move it to the specific place, storage area as soon as we're able to do that. So it's not going to take any day or two to actually
Mm,
get to the
to
correct storage
identify.
area.
Yeah. So I think that's something that stood out for me when I was at your site
Mhm.
is the measures that you have in place, the automation that you have in place, and the innovation that you have. It was amazing. Obviously, it's well resourced and it really makes your job much easier.
Yeah.
But do you think that automation is something that we should be concerned in terms of pharmacists and their roles in that space in wholesale and in distribution?
Um, so for my study, you actually were very instrumental in saying to me, why don't you just research something that's here, that's available to you? So for my study, I'm actually doing a study currently for my master's on automation. Um, it's it's not a catch-22 situation. It's not. Automation is great. I mean, if you're going to be looking at the kind of errors that can occur in a pharmaceutical wholesale space, they could be detrimental, right?
Mm.
People with medication losing its efficacy, people could then not get their therapeutic outcomes. So I think automation, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, is something that we need to embrace and be happy to have. And if anything, it actually does make the work much easier for us as pharmacists and even the operators that work in the warehouse, the different assistants, whether it's pharmacist assistants or general assistants in the warehouse. So it does make the work much easier for us. And those controls are really allowed for by the presence of the automation. So we need to then learn to move into this fourth, fifth industrial, revolution with the understanding that we have to partner with technology in order for us to be able to succeed and, create better outcomes in specifically for the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes, so I guess your focus would shift because then you in terms of the picking and the packing and things would be left to automation. But in terms of the rest of it, the quality management systems, all of the SLAs and the TAs, whatever it may be, would become your role and you would be more focused in that space. So it actually takes the burden off a bit, I would imagine.
Which is then great because we get to upskill our people. We get to
Yes.
focus on things that really require us to think and apply our pharmaceutical minds, right? So
Mm,
as opposed to just picking medicines to pack it into a box, which is, you know the joke that is made or that has been made for years now. Oh, so excuse me, pharmacists just count Panados. So we are
yeah.
eliminating all of those things which maybe looked at or seen as mundane tasks, and the machine is doing that. So your
Yes.
focus is more on tasks that require you to think and to apply your mind as a pharmacist. So that's the great part about it. Also, you get to apply the skills and learn more skills while you're at it.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, we have to embrace it, as you said.
Mm.
And that opens up for even more innovation. You know, how
Yeah,
can we can improve the systems and get medicines to our patients? Because it's really patient access to medicines.
yeah.
And now you're finding ways to get it done even better. So thermal labile fridge items, it's such a sensitive space. And I think from my experience over the years as a pharmacist, it's really changed in terms of the emphasis placed on thermal labile substances. So within a wholesale distribution space, according to SAPRA's requirements with GWP and things like that, tell me some of the things that you have in place in order to ensure that thermal labile products are not really compromised in any way, because that's really such a hot topic recently. Not even recent, over the past few years, actually. So, I mean, your company, how, not necessarily company, but how do you think wholesale and distribution is getting that right?
I usually say to people that come into our warehouse, this is the biggest fridge you'll ever see in your life because it extends all the way. It's like, I think, just under 8,000 square meters. So it's quite big.
And
I mean,
distribution, to know what about distribution? I think that's key because it's
also
all
we're
good and
looking
well
at
to
how we're
have these.
distributing them, and okay, okay.
Yes,
So,
sorry.
I mean, a lot of pharmacists also, not just lay people, do not understand the importance or the I don't know, the knowledge surrounding validation of cold chain boxes, what we typically call cooler boxes. So we have cold chain boxes, and we like in our organization to have validation people on site that assist with this. So you can actually take, let's just call it a cooler box for this conversation. You can take a cooler box and actually run studies on it, packed and unpacked, to see how long it can maintain a temperature of 2 to 8 degrees Celsius without the temperature going outside of that specific range. Obviously, there's
Mm,
a specific way that you're going to do the study where you're looking at how you're packing your ice packs and what ice packs need to be packed in there, what other things you're packing in there to make sure that temperature doesn't change. So we have done those studies. These are expensive studies. It's not an easy undertaking. It requires a lot of skill set and knowledge. So we are doing our own validation studies on our cold chain boxes. And these studies have allowed us to actually have data that proves that our temperatures can be kept between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. We have boxes that can go up to 90 hours without leaving that cold chain temperature range of 2 to 8. So it basically requires studying, and I'd really urge everyone who is in a pharmaceutical space, whether you're in warehousing and distribution or not, everybody just needs to learn about that so that we are able to teach ourselves and understand why some cold chain boxes come without temperature monitoring devices inside, and some of them actually do.
Yeah, so it's just bringing knowledge and awareness around, why you pack them the way you do and the different types. Yeah. So audits is a huge part of wholesale and distribution.
Mm.
And as you mentioned earlier, all of your 90 clients would audit you, obviously, because it's in their best interest to make sure that their product is kept safely. But one of the other audits, I mean, we know Pharmacy Council is a regular audit as well. But SAPRA is also a very intense audit. So how do you think, I mean, I don't think as RPs, you ever prepared for an audit by Beats Pharmacy Council or SAPRA. So what advice would you give to somebody who is going to experience that within a wholesale and distribution side, considering you work in such a large space, international based wholesale and distribution company. So what advice would you give? How do you prepare for it?
You stay ready.
You stay ready. I like that.
You stay ready because
Always ready. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, for me, the most important thing is that you already have a QMS, a quality management system in place. You already have everything. You have the tools available to you. You have the knowledge. You have your set to do tasks on your computer. So make sure that everything is done at all times. I mean, you asked me earlier on what does my day look like? What do I do? Sometimes my day does end a bit late. Sometimes it's short days because I know I'm ahead of my task. But sometimes I do have to stay up and make sure that I work even after I've left the office because my things have to always be in accordance with what is going to be probably required during an audit. And with every single audit, always document what the auditor has found. Always document what you can improve on because people who don't get to work on your systems on a daily basis, they have a different eye, and it's great for them to actually teach you or tell you something that you otherwise wouldn't have been aware of. So always take every finding with grace, and just appreciate the fact that somebody has taken time to look at your systems and say, hey, you can improve here. I mean, you told me something
Mm.
recently which I have documented that I say, okay, cool, I need to do this every year to make sure that I'm on point every time SAPC comes on site. So you stay ready, you make sure that your QMS is followed and everybody's adhering to what they need to be doing, and you learn every single audit.
And training is key. I think
Training is
yeah.
training is key. I mean, our training has to be on point. We run such a
Mm.
huge organization, and not everybody, will have the same kind of skill set or knowledge base or qualification, if you may. So everybody has to be trained on what they're doing, and training has to be up to date. I mean, currently our training is annual for everything, and some of our trainings actually biannual to make sure that things reinforced into people's minds twice a year. So it's very
Mm.
important that training is a huge part of your QMS. And our organization again has a training manager on site who makes sure that everybody's trained, who has to monitor everybody's training, and each supervisor actually has to be like a training supervisor to their staff to make sure that the training
Mm.
is done and completed at all times. So you have to have those systems in place to make sure everybody is up to date with the latest developments in their SOP and what they need to be doing and what's expected of them in the workplace.
So staying on training, how do you keep up to date with the trends globally within wholesale and distribution? Because it's such a dynamic space. It's constantly changing. So what do you do in order
So
to make sure that you're keeping current?
we lucky we because we work for an international organization, we get to have our very nice technology forward systems in place where we can do our online training. So most of our training is online. I can design an SOP today, design questions around the SOP and answers, and create a memo for it, and then I can just send it to somebody to say, please upload on our e-learning platform, electronic learning platform. So it basically makes it that much easier. So that's one way we monitor it. And that system is automated to then remind me to say, hey, um, Siboniso Dlamini hasn't completed, who reports to you, hasn't completed their training, and please go and make sure that they complete their training on time. So it is able to escalate people. Siboniso Dlamini doesn't exist anyway, but the name I just made up. So it does tell me who hasn't completed their training, and that way we are able to follow up with people, and we're able to then push people to be able to complete their training on time. So we are never really behind because
Mm.
we set out goals for ourselves to say, okay, if we have let's say we have 20 SOPs that people need to be trained on, we separate them according to each quarter, how many a person must then do per quarter, and that system basically is automated to remind people to do their training. It escalates you to a
Mm.
manager if you don't do it, and a lot of the time, in fact, I can dare say 99% of the time, our training is up to date for all our
So,
employees.
okay, so that's your staff, but yourself, how would you keep up to date? So what, trends globally change. So how are you as the RP keeping up to date?
So it's nice. It's an interesting position I'm in, right? Because I get to work with yourself. I get to work with people in industry from different sectors. I'm in close communication with SAPRA all the time. I'm in close communication with SAPC all the time. And then there's different RPs and quality managers from these different organizations that I work with. So how I get to be able to keep to date is through my interactions with you guys, but I'm also subscribed to a lot of these platforms where I get the latest knowledge. So whenever there's a regulation or a law that has changed, I'll get an email from SAPRA that says this has been updated or this has changed, and I'll also get emails from SAPC. Um, Conferences and talks like of that nature, we haven't really found a space that is available for wholesale and distribution that is that helpful for us yet. But me and my manager are working towards getting that space and defining that space for ourselves in South Africa so we can actually make sure that not just only us, but everybody that we work with in the space understands what the latest regulations are in terms of wholesale and distribution. So look out,
I
maybe
like that.
I'm gonna be joining you guys in some conferences. Maybe we should
That'll
start
be
putting this
awesome.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be great to start up your own conference as well. Who knows? You could do that, Tula.
Mm.
So as in, there's so much talk. There've been a lot of talk this year around the responsible pharmacist course and how councils are now looking towards all RPs having a particular course that needs to, they need to have in order to prepare them. So you were lucky enough, I'm not sure, lucky or unlucky, in order to move straight into an RP role in wholesale and distribution without having that pharmacist role first.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that exposure, what's been the toughest part of being an RP?
Oh, good question. I guess again it goes back to people. I mean, the work is work, right? Work is work. Work you can always manage. You find your way around work. You find out what works for you, and then you stick to that. But managing people, and for me, I don't know where we are with that SAPC proposed plan or regulation for all RPs to then go through this training first. But if I had a view on, which I think I do, um, as a pharmacist, basically, who's also registered at SAPC. The most important thing is to teach people leadership skills. Leadership is lacking in a lot of spaces, not just the pharmaceutical space, but leadership is lacking in a lot of spaces. And it takes a really special kind of leader to be able to lead a team to their success. You know what I mean? So, um, the most challenging thing for me has been people, but also I've also learned to manage people and create a space which is safe for myself, but also safe for the people. And we all have that mutual respect and understanding with each other. So the most challenging thing I can't even remember at this point because we actually are able to work with each other. And I encourage my people to challenge me because if they don't challenge you, then they'll lie to you when things then don't go correct.
Yes.
So, but if they're able to challenge you, they can tell you of anticipated challenges, whether it's for their work or their workspace, that you can then attend to before they become an actual problem.
Um, I think that goes across the board, irrespective of whether you're in the RP role or not. I think people
Yeah.
dynamics are always so complicated. One of the things that I came across from other RPs working in wholesale and distribution is because it's not such a popular space to work in, and we have very few in the country. One of the
Mm-hmm.
challenges they faced was understanding the legislation and the licensing and the expectations by SAPRA, expectations by Pharmacy Council, because it's such a different space compared to retail. So how did you maneuver through that? Because that must have been a little bit out of your depth. Because if you look at all the standard operating procedures, like you said, CAPA, vendor qualifications, the SLAs, I think that's what I was trying to get at in terms of as an RP, don't you think you need that depth of knowledge before you take on that role? Or from your experience, now that I know that you went straight into the RP role, do you really think that wasn't such a, yeah, wasn't such a lack for you, that you just fitted into that space based on your knowledge?
So it's a nice loaded question you're asking. I I, I I don't want to sound arrogant and say I didn't need the training, but for I mean for myself and my personality type and the kind of person that I am, learning excites me. Doing something challenging and new excites me because I'm like, well, there's been people who were able to figure this out before myself, before I got here. How did they do it? And
Mm,
I will, like I told you, I will use YouTube sometimes to learn specific concepts and theories. And it's just a great tool that I get to use, and the internet as a whole. I read books. So for me, the main thing is the personality type, I suppose, that's going to allow you to move into any space. And depending on the kind of personality type you have, or how you or your learning style, so to speak, it might be different for different people. But I definitely don't think I would be totally opposed to RPs getting some sort of training before moving into their roles. Did I need it? I probably did, but I probably enjoyed challenging myself and learning my way around it and
mm.
maneuvering my way around it on my own more. So I do think it would be very beneficial for people, especially young people moving into that space.
Thank you. So, I mean, as I said, I started off saying that I think warehouse and wholesale distribution is not popular amongst young pharmacists. What would you say to them would be the best thing that would encourage them to come into that space that you love so much that you would want to share it with everybody?
Oh, because we
So,
don't, because we didn't have questions, I I remember thinking, I don't know what to prepare for you, but one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I make sure that is on my computer, I get ready, is to tell you about us and our new acquisition. Sorry, we've acquired another company which is going to make us potentially the biggest logistics organization globally. I suppose how you need to look at it is through the lens of the whole world and where the world economy is moving towards. Um, Look at how the space is moving towards online purchases. You know, that tech space where people are able or they don't want to walk into shopping malls, for example. So it's called, yeah, basically warehouse and distribution for me is innovative. It's the future. It's where basically most industries are moving towards. So it's important that people learn that as an industry, it's very dynamic. There's a lot to learn, there's a lot to explore, and also it's just where the world is moving towards. So there's greater sustainability for any kind of job in warehousing and distribution, in
mm,
logistics as a whole. Logistics is really growing globally, and it's what I'd encourage anybody in any sector, if they can, to move into it. I mean, the only
mm,
thing about it that would make it really unpopular is that for us as pharmacists, because we are quality pharmacists, we sort of also have to be there on a daily basis. So the work from a home job kind of thing, it's a bit difficult or challenging for us. But in terms of a space that is sustainable, where you are guaranteeing yourself a future, where the standard practices are basically standardized across the whole entire globe, this is the space because you can basically work
mm.
anywhere around the world. Like I keep saying, it's sustainable, and you're guaranteed to have a job basically for as long as you need to have one.
Absolutely. I think that's a space that will never go away. We're always going to need wholesale and distribution, always.
So I
Um,
twisted my tongue there a bit. I wanted to say e-commerce. That's the big word, right? That's a big buzzword
okay.
right now in terms of the economy. It's e-commerce, and e-commerce is basically what we do. So it's part of
Yes.
e-commerce, that space that we're working in. Yeah.
Yeah, and who knows, remote warehousing and distribution could be a thing of the future. I mean, people could be sitting at home and monitoring. I've seen that where you can monitor stock movement remotely from wherever you sit. Who knows? That's a possibility.
No, it's
But
definitely possible. Yeah.
yeah, but what I love also about this wholesale and distribution is that you can go anywhere in the world with the skills that you learn.
Yeah.
And you can work, you can leave your job today and work for an international because the principles are the same across, no matter where
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've been asked or maybe wanting to want somebody wanted to poach you because of your skills. If in an up and coming country, they would want to have you there because of what experience you've had. So now that I would think reaching the RP role at such a young age is such an achievement. So well done to you.
Thank you.
But also, where would you go from here? What would be the next step in a wholesale and distribution career for somebody who has now reached this position, this pinnacle position?
Interesting question again. I, I suppose a lot of the pharmaceutical organizations usually look for a country quality head or a country quality director. I mean, that's probably going to be my next career move. I'm looking at positions that allow me to then look over all the operation in terms of quality,
Mm.
whichever organization it is. But I will say I've got a really, really great boss. I love my boss. So I really enjoy what I do and working under her great leadership. So yeah, it's not something I'm looking into right now. So but I definitely look at my next career move as moving
Mm.
towards a space where I am, even if I'm heading the Africa region in terms of quality, whatever organization I work for, it's something that I'm looking at because quality is such an integral and important part of any organization, especially
Mm.
with the food and drug industries. So to have somebody with quality experience is a huge plus for organizations to be able to prosper. So I wouldn't even limit myself to just pharma. Anything that allows me to look at quality across the board
Yeah.
within the continent or even somewhere internationally, I'd be very happy.
Mm. Yeah, that's such a key thing you're saying because I always say I think pharmacists are so versatile. We come out with a degree that allows us the versatility to move across many sectors because we have so much of exposure to all of the different sectors. So you mentioned a master's degree. Do you think it's necessary for career progression? Why did you do it and why are you doing it? And do you think it's really needed?
In today's day and age, yes. I don't want to say so, but in today's day and age, yes, because um, with the younger generation that's coming behind us, they're not stopping at anything, and they actually a lot of them who have parents that have degrees themselves have the economic ability to then carry on and study further and get their PhDs and stuff. So it's important to basically upskill yourself. It's great for yourself to just grow for your own self actualization, but it also helps in terms of how you look at things, how you look at the world, how you tackle problems. So I'm
Mhm.
doing an MBA, which is great for leadership. So that's what I'm looking into. And as much as people talk about how MBAs are overdone, too many people have MBAs, but it is still just a great degree to have because it helps you to know how to manage and how to work with people better. So also for you to be a better follower yourself with your own leaders that are
Mhm.
leading you. So those skills, you can say people can be born leaders, but there's also specific things like accounting that you're probably not exposed to as a pharmacist that you get to learn, and economics. So for me, it's important that people do get to upskill themselves academically. Definitely.
I agree. I think postgraduate degrees are essential in this day and age, as you said, based on what's happening and the trends around the world, that more and more people are seeking that. But also, I think postgraduate degrees allows you perspective and to be able to say, you know what, I didn't realize that. I don't know as much as I thought I did. And it just allows you to think a little bit more broadly, which is, I think, to grow the economy, we need those types of skills.
Hmm.
So I mean, I'm not being biased because I'm an academic, but for me, postgraduate degrees I think are core to just not improving your career, but also for you to think differently as well.
Hmm.
So any concluding remarks, Tula? I mean, it was a great interview, and you've said so much. What concluding remarks? Okay, before we even go there, I always like to ask this question. If you had a time machine and you had to go back in your career, be it from a legislative perspective, be it from your own career path, what would you have changed? What would you have done differently?
Sounds very spiritual to me. I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything. I think I've had tough times in my career. I've worked for an organization that really, did not value me as an employee, and I felt really mistreated. But I think even that was important for my growth, right? Even that taught me everything not to be when it comes to how I handle my stuff. I'm not saying they're the happiest stuff in the world, but at least, we have a great understanding and great relationships with each other, I believe. So I wouldn't really change anything in my career. I'm really glad that I've gone through the things that I did, even the tough ones, because it's all just basically all encompassing of who I am today. So it's really helped me to grow in that way. Nah, I wouldn't change anything. And I actually really enjoy and love pharmacy and what I do today. So I do believe that everything I've gone through has led me to this specific point now.
Wonderful. It's all pieces of the puzzle, as they say,
Yeah,
eh?
yeah.
Yeah. So anything concluding you want to say that to encourage young pharmacists or pharmacists who have established careers and want to switch to wholesale and distribution?
So, I mean, my advice to anybody who is basically a pharmacist is to say, I mean, my parting words are really going to be when I was in university, I remember the one thing our lecturers are really big on, and shout out to my favorite lecturer, Sue Burton, at NMU. She's at Rhodes now. She used to speak about the importance of being able to uphold the career, the pharmacy career, being able to have integrity and to maintain, the professionalism and, all those good things about the career. And for me, that's the most important thing. So, whatever you do in any space you exist in, whether you're a retail pharmacist, whether you are a wholesale distribution pharmacist, or any other space, research, you name it, the important thing is to be able to come through every day with the best attitude and putting the best that you can on the table, because pharmacy is really becoming seen. I mean, with the COVID-19, people were talking a lot to SAPRA. People were saying SAPRA out of their mouths, not even knowing what it is, and it really put us on the map. So it also shows the importance of pharmacy, and pharmacies were actually offering the vaccines in the different establishments. So it's really important that wherever you are in the pharmaceutical space, you are able to uphold the integrity of the profession and you represent pharmacy and pharmacists in the best possible way. For pharmacists wanting to move into wholesale and distribution, I never tire when it comes to what I want to achieve. So people must not give up in terms of trying to apply. You never know when your big breakthrough is going to come through. So, and do really upskill yourself. It's important, but also just never tire in terms of trying to apply and reaching out to people. I remember I used to think it's very silly when they told us, reach out to people, talk to them on LinkedIn. People do talk to me on LinkedIn, I'm not always able to assist everyone, but with whatever I have that I can assist them with, I'm able to reply to their messages. So it's important that people don't give up in terms of trying to get what they want or to where they want.
Thanks, Tula. That is amazing advice.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. And thank you for a lovely interview. It was really interesting and engaging. And I wish you all the best with your career in the future.
Thank you so much, Fanny. I was very nervous.
The dynamic nature of pharmaceutical warehousing and distribution is indeed both exciting and challenging. The need to stay current and attuned to the ever changing landscape, whether it's regulatory changes, supply chain disruptions, or advancements in technology, requires a level of vigilance and adaptability that most industries don't demand. It's a space that can take you to a global platform, and the opportunities are endless. Thank you so much for listening, and please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode.